Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about UX design. It's something we all interact with every single day and might not even realize it.
Yeah, it really is everywhere.
So we're going to try and take a look at what exactly makes for good UX design. And to help us out with that, we're using this great article from Springboard. It's called 30 UX Interview Questions with Answers Plus Insights.
Well, that's a good one.
It's really geared towards people who want to get jobs as UX designers.
Mhm.
But it has some great information that I think is really going to help all understand UX design a little bit better.
Absolutely. And even if you aren't trying to become a UX designer, just having a basic understanding of the principles can make you a better consumer of technology
Yeah,
and a better communicator when you have to work with design teams.
absolutely. Okay, so first things first.
Right.
What even is UX design?
Yeah, that's the big question.
So the article gives this really cool analogy. It says, imagine explaining UX design to a child. You would say, think about a toy with big, colorful buttons that you just want to press.
Yeah, I like that.
It's simple. It's fun.
It gets the point across
Yeah.
that it's not just about making things look pretty.
Right.
It's about making them enjoyable
Yeah.
and usable and intuitive. And that's really at the heart of what good UX design is all about, right? It's thinking about the user's needs and making the experience of using something, whether it's a website or an app or even just a physical product, as smooth and enjoyable as possible.
Yeah. In the article, they talk about a few different skills that are important for UX designers to have. One that kind of surprised me was user advocacy.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge one.
I mean, it makes sense,
Absolutely.
but I don't know. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right.
So, what does that look like,
Yeah.
being a user advocate as a UX designer?
So I think about it as, you are the voice of the user in the design process.
Oh, okay.
So you're the one who's constantly thinking about their needs, their pain points, and you're advocating for design choices that are going to make their experience better.
Uh-huh.
So, a lot of times that means pushing back against maybe what the business wants or what the developers want to do.
Right.
And saying, hey, wait a minute, how is this actually going to impact the user? Is this going to make their life easier or is it going to make it more difficult?
Can you give me an example of a situation where that might come up?
Sure. Let's say you're designing a mobile banking app.
Okay.
And the business team, they might want to cram as many features as possible
Oh, yeah, I hate.
onto the home screen, right?
Yeah, it's so overwhelming.
Because they're thinking, well, we want the user to do all these things and see all these things. Beige, exactly. But as a UX designer, you might be thinking, well, hold on a second. If we put all this stuff on the home screen, it's going to be really overwhelming for the user.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to find what they're looking for.
And then they might give up and use a different app.
Right. So you might advocate for a cleaner, more minimal design where only the most essential features are on that home screen.
Right.
And then maybe the less essential things are tucked away in a menu or something like that.
Okay.
So it's about really thinking about what's going to make that user experience as smooth and as stress-free as possible.
Yeah. It's finding that balance between what the business wants and then also what the user needs.
Exactly.
Which I'm sure can be difficult sometimes.
It definitely can be. Yeah.
So they also talk about in the article another kind of common pitfall, which is neglecting the business side of things.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that makes sense too, because you can have the most beautiful design
Yeah.
that functions great,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's not feasible for the business to actually create and implement.
Right. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
So you have to be able to think about those things too, right? How much is this going to cost to develop? Is it actually something that we can build? And does it align with the overall business goals?
Right.
So it's not just about designing in a vacuum, right?
Right.
You have to think about all these other factors.
Yeah, it's a balancing act.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of the overall picture of UX design,
Yeah.
let's talk about how the actual design process works.
Okay, let's get into it.
So step one, according to this article, is research.
Research.
So before you even start sketching or coming up with ideas, you have to do your research.
You got to know who you're designing for, right?
Right.
You can't just design something and hope that people are going to like it.
Yeah, it's got to be data driven.
Exactly.
So how does that work? How do they do their research?
So there are a lot of different methods that UX designers use, but some of the most common ones are, things like user interviews, where you actually sit down with people who are representative of your target audience, and you ask them questions about their needs, their pain points,
Right.
their behaviors.
So it's almost like you're a journalist.
It is, yeah. You're trying to gather information, you're trying to understand people's stories, and really get a sense of what their experience is like.
That's cool.
You can also do things like surveys, which are a good way to collect data from a larger group of people.
Right.
And then another really valuable method is usability testing.
Okay, so what's that?
So usability testing is where you give someone a prototype of your design, whether it's a website or an app, and you watch them use it.
Oh, okay.
And you see where they get stuck, you see what they find confusing,
Hmm.
and you get their feedback on how it could be improved.
And you do that before it's actually like the final product.
Exactly. So
Hmm.
you can catch those problems early on.
Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah, it's much easier to fix things in the early stages of the design process than it is once it's already been built and launched.
Yeah.
So research is really like the foundation of everything.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like detective work in a way.
I was going to say, you're like a detective looking for clues
Yeah,
about how to make the best user experience.
exactly.
Okay, so they've done all this research, they've got all this data.
Right.
How do they actually measure if their designs are successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not just about like whether it looks pretty or whether you personally like it.
Right.
It's about whether it's actually achieving its goals.
Right.
And so UX designers use a lot of different metrics to measure success. Things like, for example, task completion rates. So if you're designing a website where people are supposed to like buy something,
Uh-huh.
you would track, are people actually able to complete that purchase?
Or are they getting stuck somewhere along the way?
Right. Or are they abandoning their carts?
Oh, yeah.
That's a sign that something's not working.
Yeah.
You can also look at things like error rates. So how many errors are people making? Are they clicking on the wrong things? Are they getting confused by the instructions?
It's like the fewer errors, the better.
Exactly. And then you can also look at more qualitative things like user engagement.
Oh, okay.
So are people spending time on your website or your app?
Okay.
Are they coming back? Are they sharing it with their friends?
Right.
So those are all signs that you're creating something that's actually engaging and enjoyable for people to use.
So it's both like quantitative data
Uh-huh.
and then also like more qualitative data.
Yeah, you need both
Yeah.
to really get the full picture.
And then they also talk about A/B testing.
Oh, yeah. A/B testing is huge.
I've heard of that,
It's a really powerful tool.
but I don't really know what it is.
So basically what you do is you create two different versions of something.
Okay.
So let's say you're designing a website homepage.
Uh-huh.
You might have two different layouts that you want to test.
Okay.
So you create version A and version B, and then you show those two versions to different groups of users, and you track their behavior
Oh, interesting.
and see which one performs better.
So like which one gets more clicks or something?
Exactly. So maybe version A gets more clicks on the call to action button, or maybe version B leads to more people signing up for your email list.
All right.
Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, you can use A/B testing to figure out which design is more effective.
Oh, that's so.
And then you use that data to inform your design decisions.
So like you could even do multiple rounds of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an iterative process.
Okay, very cool.
So it's all about like constantly testing and refining your designs to make them better.
This is so interesting. It's way more than just like making things look pretty.
It is. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot more scientific than people might think.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of like thought and strategy that goes into it.
Yeah. And like psychology.
Oh, yeah, tons of psychology.
Yeah, and we're just scratching the surface here, but
Yeah,
there's so much more to learn about UX design.
so much.
Yeah, but that's a great foundation.
I think so.
I feel like I understand it a lot better.
Me too.
Okay, so next time we're going to get into more specifics about like what it actually takes to become a UX designer.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that.
I'm excited.
Me too. Okay, so last time we kind of got a big picture view of like what UX design is all about.
Yeah, the foundations.
Now let's dive into like how do you actually get a job as a UX designer?
Okay, yeah, let's talk careers.
Because the article we're looking at is all about interview questions, right?
Yeah,
So it makes sense that we would go in that direction.
absolutely.
The article talks a lot about building a strong portfolio.
Oh, yeah. The portfolio is key.
Like how important is that for UX designers?
It's everything, really.
Really?
Yeah, because it's your chance to show potential employers what you can do.
Right.
It's not just about listing your skills on a resume. It's about actually demonstrating those skills through real-world projects.
So it's like a visual representation of your skills.
Exactly. And I think like one of the most important things that the article emphasizes is the importance of case studies.
No. Okay, yeah. What are those?
So a case study is basically a deep dive into a specific project that you've worked on,
Oh, okay.
where you walk the viewer through your process from start to finish.
So it's not just about, like, here's the final design.
No, it's about showing the journey.
Right.
Like, how did you get from the initial problem to the solution? What were the challenges you faced along the way?
Okay.
How did you make decisions?
Right.
What was your thought process?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, like, what are some things that make a case study really stand out to potential employers?
So one thing that the article mentions is the importance of clearly articulating the problem you were trying to solve.
Okay.
So, what were the user needs you were addressing? What were the goals of the project? What were the constraints you were working within?
Yeah.
Because setting the stage really helps the viewer understand the context of your design decisions.
So it's not just like, here's a pretty design. It's like,
Mhm.
this is why I made the choices I made.
Exactly. Like, here's the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
Here's the strategy.
Okay, cool.
Another thing that the article suggests is including a variety of project types in your portfolio.
Oh, okay. So, like, not just all websites.
Right. So maybe you have a case study on designing a mobile app, another one on improving the user experience of a website,
Uh-huh.
and then even one on conducting user research for a new product, for example.
Okay.
So it's about showing that you're versatile, that you can adapt to different design challenges.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I think another really important thing is to highlight the impact of your work.
Okay.
So did your designs lead to increased user engagement? Did they help improve conversion rates?
Oh, so, like, actual numbers?
Yeah, quantifiable results.
Okay.
Because that really shows that you're not just designing for the sake of designing.
Right. You're designing to solve problems and achieve business goals.
And those are the kinds of things employers are looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah, they want to see that you can deliver results.
Okay, so we've talked about the portfolio. Now let's talk about the actual interview itself.
Okay, yeah.
Because I imagine that can be pretty nerve-wracking.
It can be, yeah, especially if you're not used to talking about your work.
Right, right.
But I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that the article gives is to just be yourself.
Really?
Yeah, like, don't try to be someone you're not.
Or try to be like a UX design robot.
Exactly. Just be genuine, be enthusiastic, let your passion for UX design shine through.
So they can see you're actually a human.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So there are some questions that always seem to come up in job interviews, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, how do you handle negative feedback?
That's a classic.
Because I know, nobody likes to hear criticism.
Yeah, it's never fun.
But in a field like UX design, you're constantly getting feedback.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's part of the process.
So you have to be able to handle it.
You do. And I think the key is to frame it as an opportunity for growth and improvement.
Oh.
So, instead of getting defensive or taking it personally, show that you're open to learning and adapting.
Okay.
Even when it's tough.
Right.
And I think a good way to do that is to highlight situations where you've received constructive criticism in the past
Oh, okay.
and how you used it to make your designs better.
So, like, a specific example.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
on this project, someone gave me feedback that the navigation was confusing, and so I went back and I reassigned it, and this is how it improved.
Okay, so it shows you're, like, willing to learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. You're not afraid to make mistakes.
Right.
You just want to learn from them and get better.
Okay, that's great advice. Now, here's one that I've always wondered about. That classic question, like, is it better to submit work that's 95% perfect on time or 100% perfect past the deadline?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Right. Because it feels like a trap.
It is a bit of a trap.
Because if you say, you'd rather be late, then it's like,
Right, you don't care about deadlines.
right. But if you say you'd rather turn it in early, then, you're sacrificing quality.
Right, exactly. So I think the best way to answer this question is to emphasize that UX design is an iterative process.
Okay.
And it's about striking a balance between quality and timeliness.
So it's not always about being perfect.
No. And, explain that you understand deadlines are important,
Uh-huh.
but you're also committed to delivering high-quality work.
Right.
And that sometimes means, having those open and honest conversations with stakeholders
Right.
about, hey, this is how long it's going to take to do this really well.
Okay, so being upfront and honest.
Exactly. Communication is key.
Okay, cool. Now let's talk about something that I know a lot of people get really nervous about. Whiteboard challenges.
Oh, yeah, those can be intimidating.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, those are like where they ask you to, like, design something on the spot.
Right, in the interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, any advice on how to approach those?
So the first thing is to remember that the goal is not to produce a finished, polished design in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's really about showcasing your thought process and your problem-solving skills.
So like how you think.
Exactly. So the interviewers are watching how you approach the problem,
Uh-huh.
how you break it down, how you communicate your ideas.
Okay.
They're looking for those aha moments
Right.
where you demonstrate a deep understanding of UX principles.
So like even if your final design isn't perfect,
Right.
it's more about like showing how you got there.
Exactly. Yeah, the process is more important than the product in this case.
Okay.
And I think the best way to prepare for whiteboard challenges is just practice.
Okay.
Like, come up with some common design prompts
Uh-huh.
and try to work through them on a whiteboard or a piece of paper just to get comfortable with that process of thinking out loud and sketching your ideas.
Okay. That's good advice. And then like in terms of just general interview prep,
Yeah,
the article has some really good tips too.
it does.
Like what are some of the things they suggest?
So one thing that they really emphasize is researching the company and its products.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to show that you understand their mission, their target audience,
Right.
and, what they're trying to achieve.
So you're not just there for any job.
Right, you're there for that specific job.
Okay.
Yeah, you've done your homework.
And you're genuinely interested in working for that company.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Anything else?
Another thing that they suggest is being prepared to articulate your design process.
Oh, okay.
So, have a clear understanding of how you approach design problems
Uh-huh.
and be able to explain that in a concise and compelling way.
Okay.
And then also have a few examples of challenging projects that you've worked on
Got it.
that really demonstrate your skills and your experience.
So you have those stories ready to go.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, so I feel like we've covered a lot of really useful information about
We have.
how to actually like get a job as a UX designer.
Yeah, nitty gritty.
Yeah, but I think one thing that really stands out to me is this emphasis on like passion and communication.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about having the technical skills.
No, it's about being able to communicate your ideas effectively.
Right.
Being able to collaborate with other people.
Uh-huh.
And just like having that genuine enthusiasm for UX design.
It seems like those soft skills are just as important as the hard skills.
I think they're even more important in some cases.
Wow, okay. Interesting. So there's this one question from the article that I think is a really interesting thought exercise for anyone considering a career in UX design.
Okay, I like this.
It says, how do you envision your first 90 days on the job?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to think beyond the interview
Yeah.
and actually imagine yourself in the role.
Right. Like, what would you actually be doing?
It really makes you think about, like, what are the things you'd need to learn right away?
Yeah. What are your priorities?
And how would you actually start contributing to the team,
Yeah. Are you going to jump right into a project? Are you going to be doing more research and kind of getting up to speed on things?
Right, right.
There are a lot of different possibilities, but it's a good way to kind of force yourself to think through that and to articulate that to a potential employer.
Yeah, because they're going to be like, okay, this person has actually thought about this
Yeah.
and has some ideas.
And not just coming in blind.
Yeah, they're not just like, give me a job.
Right. Exactly.
They've actually thought about what they would want to do.
Yeah, they're ready to hit the ground running.
Okay, cool.
So thinking about all this stuff, one thing that really strikes me is that UX design isn't just like a one and done thing.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving, right?
Yeah, especially with technology changing so fast.
All the time, yeah. New devices are coming out, design trends are changing, user expectations are shifting.
Right.
So you have to be willing to constantly learn and adapt.
It seems like a job where you would always be learning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you're someone who likes to stay on top of the latest trends and technologies and, you're always curious about how things work, UX design is a great field for that.
It sounds like it would keep you pretty busy.
Yeah, it definitely keeps you on your toes.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
We talked about the basic principles of UX design, the skills you need, the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are like the biggest takeaways, even for people who aren't trying to become UX designers?
I think the biggest takeaway is that good design is about more than just making things look pretty.
Yeah, it's about actually solving problems for users.
Exactly. And it's about making those interactions with technology as seamless and enjoyable as possible.
And I think we've all had those experiences where we're like, ugh, this website is so frustrating.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Or like, I can't figure out how to use this app.
Right. So understanding a little bit about UX design can help you be a more informed consumer of technology.
Right, because then you understand like why it's frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. And it can also help you be a better communicator when you're working with designers,
Yeah.
because you'll have a better understanding of their process and what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, cool.
So here's a challenge for all the listeners out there.
Okay.
The next time you're using a website or an app that's frustrating you,
Uh-huh.
take a step back and try to analyze it through the lens of UX design.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ask yourself, what's not working here? How could this be improved? What are the user needs that aren't being met?
That's a good exercise.
It is. It can really help you start to see the world through the eyes of a UX designer.
And maybe even come up with some solutions yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know, maybe you'll even be inspired to pursue a career in UX design.
Yeah.
It's a really rewarding field.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into UX design.
Yeah, this was fun.
I learned a lot. I hope you did too.
Me too. I always learn something new when we do these.
And we'll see you